There's a story circulating out there right now about Ace Frehley and Jimmy Page, and it is a big story. It's about a secret guitar showdown in Las Vegas. That's right, no audience, no recording, just two legends in a room, and a lesson that supposedly changed everything. In the story, Jimmy Page challenges Ace Frehley to a duel, and Ace responds not with speed, but with space, soul over technique, atmosphere over flash. It's a beautiful story. There's just one problem. There is no evidence that it ever happened. Right now, I'm going to talk about where this myth came from, why it doesn't hold up musically or historically, and why, even though this story is almost certainly false, still matters way more than you might think. Alright, so the story that I've been hearing, there's several versions of it. I'm going to kind of cram them all together here, and it goes like this. Sometime in the late 1970s or early 1980s, Jimmy Page was hanging out in Las Vegas. He was sipping scotch and gambling and winning thousands of dollars in the casinos while he was surrounded by his fans and groupies. He heard through the grapevine that Ace Frehley was coming to the casino, and he had an idea. He decided to challenge Ace in a rehearsal room. He wanted to meet up with him, not to be hostile, but to be competitive. He wanted to, in his own words, show Ace exactly how to really play rock and roll guitar. So Ace, not knowing that he was walking into a duel, accepted Page's invitation to meet him in the rehearsal room. Page then tells him his plan, that he will show him how it is done, and he plays through Since I've Been Loving You, one of his most famous solo spotlights, where his lead playing really is phenomenal. Apparently, as soon as Page finished, Ace, who had stood there calmly with his arms crossed over his chest, walked in, plugged in his battered Les Paul, and played Fractured Mirror right there in the rehearsal room in front of a handful of onlookers and a stunned Jimmy Page. And in that moment of playing Fractured Mirror live, Page was humbled because Ace taught him something profound. Space matters. Soul matters. Silence can be just as important as sound. And with Ace playing his brilliant instrumental, he taught Jimmy Page a master class in musical truth. So this is the story that's going around, and it's gaining a lot of traction in social media. And I'm going to tell you why this story is absolutely not true. And there are a few really simple reasons. So let's start off with reason number one, which is there are no sources for the story at all. There's no interviews, no memoirs, no witnesses, no music journalists. It's just a story that is out there without any attribution whatsoever. Number two, there is no instance in Jimmy Page's long, multi-decade career where he has ever challenged anyone for anything. He definitely has rivalries with people, but he's not a dueling guitarist, and he's not a dueling person. If Page ever had a beef with someone or wanted to prove his playing to them, he would do it through his performances and through his recordings. There is no way that he would challenge another guitarist to meet him somewhere for a showdown. The idea is actually ridiculous. But the third reason, and probably the most obvious and compelling to anyone out there that plays guitar at all, is that Fractured Mirror is not a song that Ace could have played live in a rehearsal room. Because it's layered guitars, it's overdubbed, it's an instrumental. It was a completely based on studio production and using the studio to create layers after layer of guitar. And it's not that Ace couldn't probably cobble together a live version. What we're talking about here is that he would walk into a jam room and do an impromptu version of a song. Just not possible. Now, my final reason here for why this story is almost certainly false is that there is any reason why Jimmy Page would ever need to be taught about using silence or negative space. It just doesn't survive basic scrutiny here. By the time this encounter supposedly happened, Page had already written the Rain song, Stairway to Heaven, 10 Years Gone, Since I've Been Loving You, and like a fully acoustic side of Led Zeppelin 3. So there's not any evidence that Page needed lessons in restraint and using silence to his advantage as a musician. Now, Ace may have understood space brilliantly on the song Fractured Mirror, but Page didn't have any reason to learn from that song specifically since he'd been architecting with silence for years. So to me, this story is fouled up from so many different reasons, but those are the main ones. Now I'm going to tell you why I think this myth actually matters even though it's not true, and to me this is the most important part of this story. So the story isn't just spreading because people like to engage in gossip or they're gullible. It's spreading because it's reflecting cultural changes. So number one, it quietly repositions Jimmy Page. Notice what this myth does. Page isn't diminished, but he's no longer untouchable. He's brilliant but human, and the wisdom flows away from him rather than toward him. This is a subtle shift in how Page has been looked at over the years, but it reflects what I think is a broader re-evaluation of him that's already taking place. So another point is that the decades that Page has been absent from public discourse used to be mysterious, but nowadays it reads a little bit differently because other stars have reflected and given us context for their careers, and they've acknowledged their mistakes and their flaws, and they've engaged with present time. Well, Jimmy Page hasn't, so when a legend like Jimmy Page doesn't narrate their own legacy, myths step in to do it for them. Why is Ace a good modern foil for Jimmy Page? Well, number one, he never claimed to have any deep insights or philosophy. He has admitted his own weaknesses, and he aged in front of us without mysticism and showed his vulnerabilities. So that comes across as authentic, whereas a myth comes off as being distant. And in my opinion, because of Page's history with alleged plagiarism and also his history with underage girls, and also because he hasn't put out any new material in so long, he's allowing the void to be filled with all kinds of negative ideas. And I think that over time, perception is shifting subtly away from Page as the untouchable genius that he once was into someone that could become a foil for a guitar player like Ace Frehley. So no, this guitar showdown never happened, but the fact that people want it to be true tells us something really important. It tells us that rock mythology is still evolving, and it does so not by erasing legends, but by reframing them. And sometimes the stories that never happen are the ones that reveal the most about where we are now and where we want to go as a culture. And I think that, as I've mentioned in other videos, as AI becomes more and more prevalent and myths like this continue to proliferate, we're going to get into a place where it's very difficult to tell fantasy from reality, and you're going to need to take time to reflect and really vet things that you hear like this. In this case, it was simple to see that it couldn't be a true story if you know anything about music at all, but in the future there may be cases that aren't so easy to sniff out. So rock history is important to keep the facts straight, and rock mythology is fun and also has its place, but we need to keep the two of them separate. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. Music Guru here, asking you to help us on our march to 10,000 subscribers.